Podcast, having a normal Friday right now. It's gonna be a fun one though. We're taking a look at expansion cities potentially for the NHL. We're gonna draft some cities. We're gonna have some fun with it. I don't know where we're gonna end up. I mean, I know some of the cities we're gonna pick because I'm gonna pick a bunch of them, but I think we could have some fun ones in there as well. Before we jump into the draft, though, I wanted to ask you guys. How big is too big? How many teams do you think is actually sustainable for the NHL as a league? 34? 40? More?
I'll go. I mean, man, oh man. Again, you're talking to the guy that grew up when there was 16 teams and whatever it was, then it went to 21 or something like that, and I was like, whatever. Then it became 26, and then I mean, at some point it gets diluted. I think it does. Now it is such a more the NHL I'm talking about, such a more worldwide sport. We talked about it yesterday. I do believe it was the 1990 was a big change. If you do the math, there's more guys achieving the dream of playing in the NHL. But then there's, like you said, how much is too much? When does it get diluted? You know what I mean? And now if you talk like a player, well, there's two parts to it. It gives jobs, right? More teams, more, that's 60 jobs, 50 jobs because it's 50 contracts, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, players are never going to say no. Ownership, not going to say no. But what is it at? Almost $1 billion now, right? For the franchise fee. So it puts money in people's pockets. It does. But I think right now you're stretching it at the limit. I think you're at 32 now. I mean, do I think you can go to 34? Probably. Do I think that by then it becomes absurd to go past 34? Yeah, but then I'll go back and say, man, in 1990, I probably said there's no way they're going to go to 26 or whatever it was. You know what I mean? So it's, you know what I mean? When Ottawa came in and Anaheim and we were like, oh, wow, that is so weird. You know what I mean? So, yeah, now you're in the 30s. You add two more. You're almost at mid-30. I'm going to say 2 more is my limit. I'm not sure if it's the limit of the PA and Gary Bettman, but for me, 34 would be my limit, and let's take it easy a little bit there.
I'd have to agree, and it's the concern with the talent pool, and if it becomes a bit too diluted past 34.
Sure.
I just wonder, too, from a travel perspective, what does that start to look like? Is it pretty equal to teams in terms of what types of matchups they're getting in the regular season? Does that add another layer that might not be favorable from the player perspective? Love the idea of adding jobs, though, more hockey jobs for people like us, but I do worry past 34 it starts to get a little hard to manage all of those teams.
So 2 things there. I think the travel conversation is interesting because in some ways I think adding teams can help travel, especially you look in the middle of the country. You add a Houston, all of a sudden that's one easier city to get to if you're a Colorado, if you're a Utah, if you're a Dallas. But it's another long travel city if you're going to the East Coast, you're going up to Canada, things like that. So there's a little bit of weird balance there. The other thing is if you go to 34, you have to go to 36. You can't have 17 and 17. You need 18 in each conference so you can have the even divisions, whether that's 6-6-6 or 9-9. You got to go to 36 at least. You can't stop at 34, in my opinion, for that reason alone.
Here goes my math, and then you're showing the viewers that you're smarter than me. That's fine.
Well,
or
true.
Megan. I'm kidding. No. I never thought about it. I never thought about what you just said. But I agree with it. I totally agree with what you just said because it doesn't make sense at 17. You know what I mean? So then it's like, oh God, I got to step on my ego again and go like, okay, 18. Oh my God, that's a boatload of teams, man. That is a boatload of teams. The draft floor won't be able to, I mean, again, maybe that's why they're not doing an in-person draft anymore.
Too many teams.
You can't have tables anymore. Like, you can't have people on the floor. The fire marshal's going to come and kick people out. You know what I mean? So, yeah. No, that's a fair point by you. You're right. But I mean, man, oh man, it just seems like a lot.
There's got to be a reason why other sports leagues haven't exceeded 32 at this point, too.
Fair.
I think it's probably most revealing that something like the NFL can't expand past that. The money, you have to imagine, the marketability, right? It's all there. So there's probably some very practical reason for this.
One of those reasons, and I'm sure we'll get into this conversation too, how many of these expansion teams are actually pushing the NHL into a new market? I know that for a long time in Canada, there's been calls to expand to Hamilton. Everyone in Hamilton already follows hockey that's going to follow hockey. They're a Leafs fan or they hate the Leafs, one of the two. And the ones that hate the Leafs might root for that Hamilton team, but they were already there. You already had them as part of a fan base of hockey in general. So I guess my question is, if you're adding something like that, it may add cool storylines. It gives the Leafs a local rival, but does it really benefit the NHL in a business sense? Doesn't really feel like it does to me.
I think it depends on the expansion city. Like, something like Houston or something like Hamilton, there's just such a close hockey team that's been established. But I could see the benefit of like a Kansas City or a Milwaukee, because I do think that they're not really competing with another hockey team in close proximity that's in the NHL.
Yep.
And in something like Kansas City, the sports fan base there is pretty fanatical. And so you could see the possibilities there. Now, I'm not necessarily advocating for this because I don't know if I want to see what the like hockey equivalent of a Kansas City fan looks like, just in knowing what the football equivalent looks like.
Colorado,
But I could see that being a place ripe to attract hockey fans and get them really passionately involved.
Are you guys already like hinting at your draft picks right there? You know what I mean? Like,
there might be some hints in there. Yeah.
I can see that right now. I can see you're hinting at who you're drafting.
The last topic I wanted to broach before we actually get into the draft, returning to cities. Historically for the NHL, it's not worked out super great. You look at somewhere like Atlanta where they've tried twice. Phoenix now an option to return to as an expansion city. It didn't really work the first time. Even a city like Winnipeg, which they came back to, which was great for about a decade. Now the ownership is, threatening to do all sorts of silly stuff. Can the NHL benefit from returning to cities, or is that just being mad that it didn't work the first time angle?
Well, look at Colorado, Denver, right? That's one that's
return city too.
That's one that's worked. Technically Atlanta has not worked. Minnesota, it's worked. It's been different building, different area.
Let's be real, they never should have left Minnesota in the first place. But
exactly. And I just saw a thing vaguely talking about Quebec there. I'm going to say something here, and I wishes like. I wish Quebec would be in the league. I do. Obviously I got memories there, and, it's such a great fan base, but now you got to be realistic. And it's more like, if the Canadian dollar drops like it did back then when I was playing, like it was bad in the 90s. And that's where those Canadian cities really struggle. And I think that's part of Gary Bettman's, scared a little bit of a city like Quebec, right? Because you just said it, Winnipeg. Yeah, it was great. Now it's like, okay, what are we doing here about, like, we got to really get some, we got to get some sponsors, some people in the stands. We got to, because it's you're going to be at the same spot you were when you had to leave.
Yeah.
Canada's awesome. It's a great country. The corporate dollar is more like on the Toronto side of things, and it's more on the Vancouver side of things, right? Then you have obviously, Calgary and Edmonton right there in the middle. But, Winnipeg, it's a small market. Quebec is a small market. Montreal eats it up on the corporate dollar, you know what I mean? And it's only a few hour drive. It's not far. It's right there. Um, I mean, man, do I wish there was a team there. No, realistically, do I think that it could work? It could survive for a while, but then again, yes, I think you would be at a risk, like 8-10 years into it, and I don't think, you know, if you look at that point of returning to a city, I think that's what it scares Gary Bettman and company. Uh, and like I said, you've seen instances where going back to the city doesn't work. You've seen instances where it works. I think it comes down to ownership too. You got to have the right ownership, like you just talked about. If the right ownership was, or the Guns back then in Minnesota, or whatever in Colorado, it didn't work out, and the NHL is a different league than it was when the Rockies were there, right? So, and obviously, it's just been great since 95, 96 in Colorado. But you're right. I mean, I think it's interesting, and you hear Atlanta, and no, I'm not picking that city as one of my teams here coming up in our draft, so I am not leaking anything. But yeah, you're right. That's one that they're talking about, and I don't really know much about Atlanta besides the fact that when I was playing there, I always thought it was boring as crap, and it's not like I was. It's not like I was. No offense to anybody, it's not like I was excited to go. Like, oh, I'm going to Atlanta tonight. We're playing the Thrashers. You know what I mean? Like, it was just kind of like, whatever. Then they disappeared, and for me, it was kind of like, okay, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, oh man, I miss the Thrashers. You know what I mean? Where now I drove through the other day, and AJ would like this one, but we were driving past Hartford on my way to the city in Manhattan. It's fun, and I've always said, God, I miss the Hartford Whalers. You know what I mean? Like I do. You know what I mean? Like the brass bonanza. Bam, 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 bam. Anyway, so that's for us older people out there. But it was so awesome. I loved that. I always missed the Hartford Whalers. You know what I mean? But I never missed the Atlanta Thrashers. You know what I mean? And again, that's me. That's just personal. So I don't see how. Who knows? But I guess we can talk Atlanta later on if one of us picks Atlanta as a market for our draft here.
I'm not planning on it.
I might pick them. I might. Continuing on from your conversation, number one, when the NHL expands, they need to do a better job of vetting ownership. The Thrashers, horrible ownership. Obviously, this whole Coyotes moving to Utah debacle, Alex Morello is maybe the worst modern sports owner that I've ever seen. It was just an absolute disaster. Number one, better ownership has to be on the docket for any expansion team for the NHL. The question I want to ask about that, though, is realistic timeline. You both seem pretty apprehensive about expansion in general, wanting to keep that a pretty small number of teams expanding. Is expansion at all realistic in the next 5 years, or are we looking at beyond 2030, really, for a new NHL team?
I'm not really sure. Like, that feels like a league thing that I can't anticipate why.
For sure.
what the reason for not being able to do it sooner would be. From my perspective, it wouldn't seem wise because we talk about where hockey is in terms of marketing itself as a sport. Yeah. And I just don't think they're where they need to be with the 32 teams that they have to justify that.
Yeah.
And that's where the conversation about it diluting the talent pool and such, like, I think that even takes away from being able to market the league stars. It just adding more players into the fold, adding more teams into the fold. Those are the challenges I think that exist before they should consider really expanding beyond the 32 that they have. And it's to promote sustainability in the future for the sport. Like, I'm all about hockey continuing to be on the up and up as a sport that people enjoy. And that's where I think it would hold them back if they tried to expand too soon, too much too soon. I think that there's some things that they need to do in the present before they consider that.
I think Gary, Bettman and Bill Daly talked about it. God, what was that? The All-Star game, maybe? because somebody was talking about the Atlanta market with Anson Carter and his group trying to get in there, and so I'm going to go back, and again, I'm going to put words in his mouth, and again, it might not be totally what he said, but it was more in the likes of, this is not something that's going to happen, obviously, this year or next year. I think two multiple things they look at. One thing is a building, right? I mean, you got to have a building. So Atlanta, we all know Atlanta as a building, but would they, I thought it was pretty cool back then, the building, to be honest with you. So I'm not too sure now if, again, that would be where they would want to bring the Thrashers back, for example, but or Houston, or I think they're making do in Phoenix, Utah, and when I say making do, you know what I'm saying. They're making do. It's that 10,000 seat arena, and they had to make do because of what you just said with Morello, not being up to snuff for the NHL. And I think they were like, okay, we're going to save face here. We're going to make that transition. As Smith and company are ready to go there in Phoenix, in Utah, and there's that building. We all know it's not up to snuff for NHL. I mean, 10,000 seat is not. You're not going to survive if you don't fix it, right? So they have plans to fix it, obviously, but it's multiple years down the road. I don't think they want to get themselves into a situation like that. So wherever they go, the building will have to be adequate. Wherever they go, the math will have to work. I'm going to go with Rudo's comments earlier of the math. The divisions and the conferences, the numbers will have to match. So you know what I mean. So it's going to be, everything has to line up, and like you said, right ownership has to line up, and obviously there's so many lawyerized things in there with the PA involved now, and the everything, and so you're not looking at something that's going to happen here in the next 12 to 24 months, but possibly 24 to 48 months is probably a more logical thing here. So that's just what I think.
Without knowing too, like to your earlier point about needing to vet management, that goes for management as well as investors.
Of course, yeah.
And without knowing if that's something that's been happening for a little bit now, it does feel like if it was starting around this point forward, they would need significant time to properly vet
for sure
a new city and what type of management group is interested in them. And that's where I think the length of that timeline would be extended to make sure that there's a cautionary tale with what happened in Arizona. So I think that would just push the time out further to ensure that they're doing due diligence.
Yeah, 100%. That's not something to rush into. No doubt.
But you got to remember, if I you know what? Go to your ads there, and then I'll. I want to add one. I want to add one more thing. No, because I lived it, so I want to add one more thing to that.
You got to make sure you have your ducks in a row, like Eric was saying, and when that comes to your mental health, make sure you're getting with BetterHelp. You can get with them right now. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to whatever your schedule might be. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you end up not liking that situation, you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge with BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health is just like any other thing that you do. Maybe if you work out all the time, you're a person who doesn't skip leg day, don't skip mental health day either. That's where BetterHelp comes in. Become your own soulmate, whether you're looking for one or not. Visit BetterHelp.com/DNVR today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DNVR. And once you're all good there, make sure you have a little bit of fun too and jump over with Bet365. You can download the app with that QR code on screen right now. Sign up with code DNVR365, and when you do, you bet $5 on anything, you get $150 in bonus of bets. Plenty of Olympic bets. I think the opening ceremonies are actually still going on right now, but the first medal gets awarded tonight, or I guess technically Saturday morning. You can go put your bets down. You can bet on specific stuff. You can bet on the U.S. to win the most golds. Maybe you're a hater and think China's going to win the most golds. Take your pick. Go in with it on Bet365, whatever it is you might be betting on. Of course, when you do gamble with Bet365, be sure to use that DNVR365 code. And you must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. Eric, I know you lived it. You were supposed to be exposed in an expansion draft once upon a time.
Hey, you know what? Looking back, My God. I mean, that's a different story, but I was so mad. I really thought I was going to Minnesota. I thought I was going to get left unprotected by New York Rangers. And next thing you know, the expansion draft list came out and I was protected. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. That's how freaking bad the players were that you were digging, because I was really bad at that time. So if you had to go below me, it's like, oh my God. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't want to pay $1 billion for that, nowadays. But it's funny because Joe, a couple years before Sacco, I always give it to him, like, you were exposed, buddy. They didn't want you. And then I was always protected. No, but it's a different story. What I was trying to say is, with the Phoenix market, I lived it. Like, so I used to play, oh God, what team was it? Maybe LA Kings. And we were playing in the old Winnipeg Arena there with, the Queen Elizabeth, that big painting there. And, it was such a majestic building. It was awesome. And then one day to another, obviously, they moved to Phoenix, right? And I'm going to say that's the year before the Avs, correct? Yeah, I'm going to say that's the year before the Avs. So, you go there and it's like, you get all excited because it's Phoenix and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. You know what I mean? Like, and then you go in that building, and it is exactly what Utah is going to be playing in this year. It's that basketball building downtown. And it was just like, you're like, what? You know what I mean? Because during the game, you're like, what is going on here? There's no seats behind the net. And then, the people that are sitting up top there, they can only see, from the red line pass to the other side. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's the weirdest setting for a hockey game. You know what I mean? And Phoenix never got it right. Never got it right, because they were in that building. And then obviously then they go in east, wherever they were, like, that didn't make sense, but it was more a real estate play. And next thing you know, they're building that arena there that doesn't make sense for the people. And then we all know Glendale's been a mess there. And next thing you know, they go to Tempe in that 5,000 seat arena. So you're talking about a franchise in 20 something, all of a sudden in 3 different buildings. That all of them were not adequate enough to make sense, to have a franchise. So that's why I think the arena is a major thing. You would think that the league learned a little bit from Phoenix, you know what I mean, when they made that switch to Utah, which is, again, very unusual to do a switch like they did halfway through. I mean, I think Smith was the first one to say it, right, that they didn't expect it to, to have a team like now, you know what I mean? So you would think that there is plans in place for, fix that building and not have a Coyotes Point 2, you know what I mean? Because it is exactly the same situation of building that they were in Phoenix.
Yeah, definitely. Let's be honest. I think that Utah move was more about the ownership group than the location and building. So it's what it is.
100%.
All right. We can get into our draft here. We have a 5-round draft where we're picking NHL expansion cities for. I'm not picky. You can pick whatever city you want for whatever reason you want. I'm not going to judge. I don't even know what order we're doing this in. What does our list look like? We can go by that.
Oh.
There you go.
All right. I'll do Houston.
Okay.
There's a large market.
Yep.
They've had successful minor league hockey history, and I think that there's a lot of fun to be had with a potential rivalry with the Dallas Stars. I do worry it might be a little oversaturated with sports teams, but I do think the location is pretty ideal to be situated in the West and playing amongst teams in that division.
Out of all the cities that are going to be on this list, Houston is the one where it feels like there's some smoke behind it. With the NHL, there have been conversations about it. It sounds like there's a potential ownership group that wants a team there. The NHL wants to be in that city. I don't know that it happens soon, but it just feels like there's too much interest from both sides for Houston not to be one of the top projected cities on the list. So,
do you have a potential name?
No.
Ah, dang.
Houstons.
The Houstons. What's something
Texans.
celestial just to mess with the Dallas Stars? Houston
North Stars.
Houston
Big
Wester
Dipper.
Stars.
Wester Stars.
The Houston Big Dippers.
I like that.
No, but you're right. I do believe Houston is, if we go by Rudo's, rule of thumb there, you're going to go to 30. What did we say? 30,
36. Yeah.
36. Then I would say I would bet my house that Houston would be in it. Yes.
Yeah. Agreed. How about the Houston Constellations?
The Houston Constellations. Comets.
Yeah, there you go. Eric, you got pick number 2.
Again, this is like fantasy, correct? So
You
it's
can
not like,
any argument you want. Go off.
well, and just in case there's any Quebecers on the, listening,
Of course.
I'm gonna protect myself, but I do believe I'm gonna vote here with my heart and not with practical. I'm gonna go on emotions here, not being practical. I don't believe it's gonna happen, but I do believe I have to say Quebec City because of the nostalgia, and the building is ready. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but it's going as my first pick in round 1. Quebec City. Revive the Nords. Quebec Nordiques are back.
Can they
They
take
kept
their
like all the
history with
names.
them?
Yes, then we can split the history and
Yeah.
can go back and get his jersey retired on the top of the building and keep his records. And Peter Stastny and those guys, but you know what? They kept the name of they sell merchandise. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. They sell the Quebec Nordiques merchandise still. And people are just, it's funny because I thought they were the ugliest friggin' jerseys in the world. You know what I mean? Like, I just thought that was awful. And then you bring it back, like, kind of like 2 years ago, the Avs third jersey, whatever it was, like, give and take, I was like, oh, wow, that's a cat's ass. That is awesome. You know what I mean? So,
Yep, they were sick.
yeah, they were sick. So anyway, I a little bit of nostalgia there, but I'm going Quebec City as my first round pick. And what we'll do is we'll give a free poutine to every season ticket holder at every home game. There you go.
Certainly, the city has interest, right? If you guys remember back to when the Vegas and Seattle expansion happened, Quebec put in a bid for an expansion team. They just weren't awarded a team. So I don't know how interested the NHL is doing that, but I'm sure the city would definitely go for it if the option was there.
And the building is ready. Yep. The new building is ready.
Okay. I'm pick number 3. I'm going to do the thing both of you hate and take Atlanta here. At a certain point, the city is just too big and too ripe for opportunity. And I get there's a lot of other sports there, but you look at what was it, 2018, 2020-ish? I don't know. It wasn't during COVID, obviously. But when they first brought in their new MLS team, it did great. The fan base really showed up strong for a new football team, soccer team, whatever you want to call it there, and had a lot of success. Again, we talked earlier in the show about the Thrashers. I think their failure was a lot more about a poor ownership group than an actual failure of the fans to attach to the team. I know they've tried twice and failed twice, but I really think Atlanta is a place where, one, they can be successful, and two, as long as Bettman remains the head of the NHL, his whole legacy has been bringing hockey to the Sun Belt, essentially, and to areas where maybe hockey wasn't a mainstay beforehand in an effort to grow the sport. And that's got to be Atlanta. Georgia's not a place you're going to go to expecting a lot of hockey, but with a city like that, there's just too much opportunity for the NHL, I think, even with past failures there. And if they do fail again, you can just move them to Quebec City, and then Eric will be happy. So,
yes, can't lose there.
I think the appetite for hockey has to be better than it was before, too.
Sure.
I feel like seeing the way that Vegas and Seattle have rallied around their teams, I have more faith that the sport has grown from that point when things didn't work out in Atlanta, that hopefully it's caught a little more fire and could be successful this time around.
I certainly hope so if they're actually going to expand, put it to you that way. And then I have pick number 4. We're going to snake draft this thing. I'm going. I think there has been some talk, some smoke about this city, but I'm going strictly to help the Central Division travel angle on this one, and I'm taking Kansas City. Megan, you mentioned it. There isn't really a hockey fan base that covers that region particularly well in the heartland or whatever you want to call that part of the country. They obviously love their sports there with things like the Chiefs. Maybe it sets up another rivalry for Colorado. Certainly in a world where we're going to 36 teams, it feels like, all right, that's your Central Division team. A place like Atlanta or Quebec City could cover the East. Maybe Houston ends up in the Pacific then. You might be getting a little bit weird with that. But
is Dallas still in
yeah,
Central?
half of Texas is still the Central.
That's funny.
That'd be a bit odd. But
no, I like it.
Again, under Bettman, the decree has been trying to expand the game of hockey as much as possible, and getting into an open space in the country like Kansas City just makes too much sense to me. So I'm being realistic about my picks a little bit, I guess.
There's also a building there. There's an Anschutz building. I really thought the league was going there a few years back. You know what I mean? I really thought there was leg. It was. I'm trying to remember who was it. Oh, it's Phoenix. They were talking about Phoenix.
Yep.
Back
Kansas
then.
City was
You
on
talk
the
about
list.
4 years. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, yeah, you're talking about going back, right? Kansas City Chiefs back then. You know, so that, you know, in the NHL, you know, not the Chiefs, the Scouts. The Chiefs would be the enemy in football. But the Kansas City Scouts, they had cool unis, man, back then. I liked them, and when I was growing up, you guys weren't born. But again, you're going back. It's a lot like Colorado, you know, the Avalanche, you know, with the Rockies back then. It kind of feels that way. If ever was a team going back there, it would be like they would try to, you know, show the success of you know, the football team and the support that they get and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, yeah, that's a good pick there by you. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. It was on my list. You stole it. I am mad at you.
Kansas City Scouts, same franchise as the Colorado Rockies, technically. That obviously ended up in Jersey, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So it would be another return, technically, I guess. Before we continue this draft, if you are hiring, maybe for a new hockey team, you need Indeed. Make sure you get with Indeed if you need to hire. Their website is visited by over 350 million global visitors every single month, according to Indeed data. And they have a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. You can ditch the busy work. You can do all of your scheduling, screening, and messaging through Indeed so you can connect with candidates faster. And 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So get over with Indeed, whether you're hiring or you're trying to get hired. Either way, Indeed is the best website to get yourself out there. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And once you get hired and you get that fancy new signing bonus, make sure you head over to your Front Range Toyota dealerships. Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR. Tons of different vehicles to choose from. 17 different all-wheel or four-wheel drive cars if you're going out, if you're vacationing in this summer off-road and in Colorado. They also have 16 different hybrid and zero-emission vehicles if you want to be eco-conscious. And the vehicle for everyone, really, whether it be their trucks like the Tundra, their SUVs like the RAV4. Is that an SUV? Yeah, I guess a RAV4 is an SUV. I don't know what to call it. They also have sedans like a Corolla. Whatever it might be, Toyota has the vehicle for you. They're the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche and the official vehicle of DNVR. And you can get it at your Front Range Toyota stores, including AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, and Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. I believe it is Eric's pick on the clock.
On the clock. I don't need a timeout here on the floor. I will go with my next pick on my list. And I'm going to give it a hint again with my talent at singing. But here goes. The tan, 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 tan.
Yeah.
And then I'm naming our chat person, Vincent Crudo, general manager. Vincent Crudo, general manager
That's
of
great.
the Hartford Whalers. It doesn't get better than the Brass Bonanza. You gotta have it back. I am telling you, stepped on that ice at the old Civic Center. You guys know it's in the mall, right? The rink.
Yeah,
Oh my
I was
God!
gonna say Hartford can come back, but they're not allowed to play in a mall again. That's
They wouldn't let them play in the mall, but it was friggin' awesome. You know what I mean? Like you walk in, there's like Abercrombie, and then there's like Buckle, and then there's like whatever Nordstrom's, and then you open a door, and there's like what? There's like friggin' 15,000 seats, and you're like, what's going on? So yeah, it is in a mall. I loved it. So close to New York City. You're talking about like the old Adams division back then. It was so awesome with, the Boston Bruins, Montreal. The proximity to all those cities. It was awesome. I'm going to put Claude Lemieux on the map. Claude Lemieux's overtime goal, Montreal Canadiens, 1986 in the first round, and the decisive game, backhand shelf on Mike Liut. Against the Hartford Whalers. Yeah, that put Claude Lemieux on the map as a playoff performer, and that's where he became a legend. I'm a big Wales guy, and boy, oh boy, AJ will be pumped right there, right next to Stanford.
Hartford, the only franchise to have a father-son duo play for them in the NHL also. Fun fact.
Gordie Howe.
Yep. Hartford, I'm down. I've always been down to bring Hartford back. It easily fills one of those East Coast slots if we're going all the way up to 36. So,
my guy Vincent, my new GM Vincent. He knows. You grab some Annies on your way to the game. It's a surreal experience. Sorry, Megan.
No, it's a good one. I would have eyed Hartford next just because of its proximity to Boston and New York. Those probably some fun rivalries, and I think the youth hockey scene is good in Connecticut. I think there's just a really big passion for hockey in that area. So I think it'd be successful. I will go with all right. This might be a little controversial, but I'll do Milwaukee.
No, I love this pick.
I think there's a strong hockey culture. It's the kind that might be like small but mighty.
Yeah.
And obviously the Admirals are already there. So there's some pro hockey to kind of test the interest of that. And then it's so close to so many teams. I think that the travel would be very easy. Chicago,
Minnesota's right there. Yeah.
Minnesota and the Detroit Red Wings is where I'm trying to say.
Yep.
So I think, obviously there are still some concerns with it being a smaller market and competition with other sports teams. I want to say like collegiate sports would be popular.
MLB too.
MLB. But I like it. I just feel like I remember from college hockey, the buzz around the Badgers was always hype, and I could see that translating to an NHL team. So that'll be my next one. And then for my next pick, I will go. This one I'm not in love with, but it's San Diego. And the reason I'm not in love is because California has a lot of hockey representation. And the reason I'm inclined to look at San Diego more closely is because of the success of Coachella recently as an American League team that was added to California. There is a really passionate California hockey base, and travel would be very easy among the California teams. Probably a favored road trip for players too, to just kind of go through California. Probably pretty easy work. It's a nice city. There is a strong sports culture in general. Obviously the San Diego Gulls exist there and have had luck, but the team has been kind of on the Gulls have had struggles these last couple of years. So I think to have an NHL team to rally around would be really exciting for them.
I like both of these picks a lot. I really like Milwaukee, mostly for the reason of look at proximity to Canada. You're going to get Canadian fans that root for that team as well.
That's true.
And Milwaukee is a city that you can expand to that does not have an NFL team. Yeah, I get it. Green Bay is just down the way a little bit, but for a league like the NHL that has such gate-driven revenues, when you're not competing to get people in seats directly against a local NFL team, I think that's a big opportunity for them. And then I love the San Diego pick because you're an NHL player. Do you want to play in Milwaukee or do you want to play in San Diego?
Yeah.
You want to play in San Diego.
San Diego would become one of the, like Vegas, wanted destinations for free agents. Best city in the American League by far. I mean, what a spot that is. And again, it's been 30, 40, 50 years. The Gulls there have been there. It's been awesome. When it's well run, it is an awesome place to play. Milwaukee on my list. I have to scratch it from my list. I'm mad, Megan, you stole it. Maybe you looked at my list before, so that's BS. I'm kidding, but Milwaukee. I one of my pit stops on the circuit. I loved going there instead of Chicago because A, the airport's a lot easier to get around. B, getting a rental car is a lot easier. But you got a major league feel there, with the Brewers and that big stadium. And I've always loved going in Milwaukee. American hockey thrives there. American Hockey League, I mean. It's awesome. Obviously, they're in that little old building down the street, but the Bucks do well there. I love Milwaukee. I'm a big fan. And like I said, San Diego is man, oh man, what a destination that would be. Now, with my next pick, I'm going to go with, we're getting to the bottom of my list there a little bit, but I'm going to go with a city that I have to say I've never been. I don't know why, but I've been everywhere, but I've never been to that freaking city. But I'm going by doing a little bit of homework. I was looking at major league. It goes a bit of what you just said with competition, direct competition with football and stuff like that. But I was just going with, I was a big baseball fan growing up, and then Cincinnati Reds were always like a team I liked to follow, and because they would come to with the Montreal Expos, and so Cincinnati's my city. Even though I've never been there, I'm putting him in there in round 3. It's a mid pick, right? Round 3, third rounder, who knows? But, I don't know why. I just feel that maybe it would be, right there in the middle. It could be viable. And I did hear about it years back a little bit, but not much. Nothing's ever really come out of it. But I just felt that, hey, there's some Major League Baseball there and NFL and, who knows? There's no NBA, right? So who knows? So
yeah, NBA's in Cleveland.
Yeah.
My only struggle there is you want to put a team that close to Columbus, which is a team that hasn't, done an amazing job of putting together a great fan base. And part of that is their lack of success. But I just don't know. It feels tough to me to put a team there. You have a lot of Chicago fans in that area too. I wonder if it runs into a little bit of you're not really growing the sport at all. Not that it couldn't work. Cincinnati's a town of or a city of like 3 million people or something. So there's plenty of population there for sure.
Hey, we're going to have some arguments here coming up on those next 6-7 picks because you're starting to be a little thin on cities.
No, I know. I think we're going to start having some more creative options.
Honolulu.
I was Googling San Juan, Puerto Rico. Like,
let's go.
How far is it for some of these teams to travel to San Juan? And it's too far. I won't pick San Juan.
All right. Well, my next pick, Eric is going to love, even though the population's probably not big enough. It doesn't actually make sense for the NHL, but I'm going to ignore that, and I'm going to take Halifax.
Halifax.
We need a maritime team.
Halifax.
We need it. We need one out there somewhere for all of those hockey fans. The Avs just recruit every player from Halifax and Newfoundland, so we
But then where would we get our players?
Still from there, and they can have all the Coloradans in Halifax. It's fine.
Whoa, no.
But honestly, if there was going to be a team in the Maritimes, I think it pretty much would have to be Halifax. It's the only one that comes even close to having a big enough population locally. And obviously they support the Mooseheads super well out there, and there is plenty of hockey culture. So maybe not yet, but maybe someday Halifax could be a thing in the NHL.
Boy, oh boy, you're right. I would love it. I mean, I loved when in the American League we were in that the Maritimes. We had 5 teams there. It was crazy, an unbelievable division. And I think what it would become is Halifax would become the team for all the Maritimes. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? They would
exactly.
be
Yeah.
their team, and here's what I'll say. And man, oh man, I do believe in what I'm going to say. Do I think they could fill 41 nights a year, 18,000 people yes, I do. I really do. I truly believe that. Now, at what price is one thing, and B, the corporate dollar coming in. Yeah, that's where you would run into. But would they have the support to fill a freaking rink? You know what I mean? Like in Halifax, Nova Scotia? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great part of the world. If people on chat and there have been there, get your butt down there. It's a lot nicer in the summers than it is during the winter. But there's some great cities. There's some great PEI, Kansas City. Halifax. Sorry. Moncton. There's so many great places. Cape Breton. There's unbelievable golf courses there. I'm a big Halifax guy. I listen. It would be awesome. It would be honestly, like, besides Quebec City, like, of all the cities that I see there, if that could happen, it would be magical to play there. It really would be magical. It would be unbelievable. You're talking about a passionate fan base. It would be sick. So yeah, I love the pick. I love the Halifax pick.
Just for the record, Edmonton, one of the smallest population cities in the NHL, population right around 1 million. Halifax's estimated population this year, just over 500,000. So pretty small compared to other NHL cities. My next pick, I'm a little bit torn on what to do with this pick because there's a couple of ways that I could go about this one, but I think I'm gonna take my next weird pick, which is even weirder than Halifax, but it stays in Canada, and I'm gonna take Saskatoon.
Yeah.
This one I think makes even less sense than Halifax does, just because the plains of Canada is very, very spread out. You have a lot of small towns with small populations. It would be hard to fill that building, I think, on a nightly basis. But it's a place that's been talked about before. At one point, the St. Louis Blues almost moved there. This was a long time ago, but it's a place that certainly has an interest in hockey. Of course, you have junior league teams all over the provinces out in the plains. So it's not like they don't like their hockey up there. I don't know that it grows the sport at all. I don't know how much interest from a sponsorship standpoint would be in going into a small town city like that. But I'm sure the fan base that actually lived there would love it. So that's my reach.
No, it's a good call. I again on my list too. So we're all doing the same homework, and it sounds like Max Bowers are pumped about it too. He might name you general manager. But it was. And if I'm trying to go back, and probably in the late '80s, like St. Louis Blues came that close, this close to moving there. Canada Cups were played there. Parts of it was like, they were really, really trying to push Saskatoon as a new city in the NHL. It just didn't happen. A little bit like Hamilton, you heard for years. You know what I mean? You were hearing Saskatoon as a next city. It makes sense. You know what I mean? It makes sense in the sense that if you're going down the pipeline, right, from Vancouver to Edmonton, Calgary, and then there's Winnipeg, and then then you go in Ontario and Toronto. So you probably could squeeze one in there in Saskatoon. It makes sense. So I mean, yeah, I love the pick. I don't disagree with it, and I think it would have been a viable option. Even back then in the NHL. But who knows about the corporate dollar? Like we've been saying, I don't know how that would work out.
Yeah, might be tough in that regard. Eric, you are on the clock, buddy.
I'll go quick here because I'm looking at the clock. But man, oh man, I was just there last week, and I'm going to be stupid here, but I'm going to go Brooklyn. Put one in Brooklyn. There's so many freaking people in New York City, and then you got the Islanders, you got the the Devils, and then the Rangers, and then we're trying to add Hartford down the few hours away there. Let's just go right across the bridge. Let's just go Brooklyn and call it a day. It feels like youth hockey. I love being a Ranger. We would get in our cars and drive 5 minutes to New Jersey and be in our beds at night. I mean, I was just surreal. It was so fun. It's a road game, but it's like closer than your practice rink. So it's like, it was weird. So I just was there last weekend, as you know, and I remember I went on a boat tour with Ty there to show him the city and the Statue of Liberty, and then I was looking around and I'm like, oh my God, you know what? Brooklyn Bridge right there. Let's bring back. Let's add another team there. Let's be crazy. Put another team there.
New
That's
York
my fourth
doesn't
round
need
pick.
another loser. Boo. They certainly have the pop for it. I can't imagine the NHL would love encroaching on the Rangers as an 06 team, though. But all right, Megan, you have a double here to finish up your draft.
Okay.
I can tell you my 5th round pick is going to be crazy. So
I have a few that I feel kind of equal about.
Sure.
I really like Matt shouting out Omaha earlier, and people may not know this. I used to live in Omaha, so from the college hockey side, DU games were fun while I was in school. The USHL is huge.
For sure.
In Nebraska.
3 teams.
I have been to USHL games, and the Icebox in Lincoln for the Lincoln Stars, the atmosphere was like a pro atmosphere. The presentation, it was electric, and the seats were filled, and the crowd was loud. And so I'm like, I don't know, there is a hockey fan base in Nebraska. There's obviously not an NHL team. I think like collegiate football would be the biggest competition.
Yeah.
But putting it in Omaha where you have UNO and the Lancers already there, and I know that they're passionate about those teams, I see the possibility for it. I'm going to pick Omaha for my next pick.
For what it's worth, the NHL has been a league that isn't afraid of going into places where there are no professional teams. We saw it in Vegas. We saw it in Seattle. Seattle a little weird because there used to be teams there, but then they moved. But if the NHL feels like they could get an advantage in a market by being the first ones in, as far as the major sports leagues are concerned, they're not afraid to do it.
All right. For my next pick. Final pick. San Juan. No, I'm just kidding. I will go with Portland.
Yeah.
And I think strong sports culture. Yeah. I think the proximity to Seattle is obviously fun for those teams. Only worry is actually the competition with other sports teams would be my concern.
For sure.
I think that it feels like a pretty safe bet.
Yeah. You start building that Northwest division at that point. You have Vancouver up there too. I think Portland should have gone like 2 rounds earlier, to be honest. I think that's a great pick in the 5th round. Your last pick?
For my last pick of the 2024 expansion team, whatever, destination draft, I'm going to go off the board here. I had one more city that I think would represent like a nice little hockey player, maybe undersized, but really high hockey IQ, you know what I mean? But a long shot, let's face it, we're in the 5th round, so basically equivalent of the 7th round, So I'm going to go with a wild one here. That I'm going way off the board, way off. So the phone just rang and at the draft table and said, this is, let's give this one, let's give this a shot. That's what I'm doing. And I had heard about it back then. It did have a little bit of legs, and I thought it was the stupidest idea, and I still think, but I'm going with them as a pick just because it's so wild. I'm going with Mexico City. That's where I'm going with. Hockey.
This is so fun.
We're going to Mexico. Yeah. Whatever. They're going to Mexico City. You know what I mean? So, You don't want the expansion, the Sun Belt, and all that stuff over the years. Let's go crazy. Let's cross the border to Mexico, and that's where I'm going.
I have one
off the board.
Very specific reason why I want Mexico City in the NHL. Mexico City's altitude is like 7,500 feet. So then you can't talk about the altitude in Denver anymore if Mexico City is in altitude, because it's way worse in Mexico City than it is in Denver.
It'd be the best food in the NHL right there. Obviously, that'd be awesome. I love the food there. It's great.
I mean, I'm sure Mexico City would be a fun place.
It sounds so fun. They need to at least do some kind of exhibition game or
straight up
something.
There we go. Mexico City, you can hit San Juan on the way. You call it good, all right?
Didn't the Rockies go to Mexico recently?
Did. They did.
Yeah, we should totally take that.
All right. I have the last pick. I am also going to go outside the country, but I'm living in a world where in the next 6 months, teleportation gets created. And I'm putting a team in Malmö, Sweden. I think of the hockey nations of the world, as far as like Europe is concerned, I think that's about as close as you could get to the West for a real hockey country. Obviously, in reality, that travel would be insane. You can't actually do it. But if you were to find a way to cut that travel down and make it a realistic travel option, you'd have to, I'd build a whole European division. Honestly, I'd probably have 1 or 2 teams in Sweden. You'd have a team in Finland for sure. You could put a team in Germany. Go a little bit further east, and you're talking about Czechia and Slovakia getting teams. It would just be super fun to live in a fantasy world where the NHL could become globalized a little bit if travel wasn't an issue. But unfortunately, travel's an issue, so I'll keep it.
Yeah, but maybe not. Maybe not if you have those freaking, what are they called? Those jets that like
the Concords.
That would be cheap. Travel in Concords, stuff like that. That'd be awesome.
Which they don't even fly them anymore because it's like a huge problem for ships on the ocean when those things are going Mach 2 and blowing out their windows.
Oh shoot! Okay. Take that back.
That's why we need teleportation or space planes. All right.
Space planes.
We do have a couple of super chats to get to here before we end the show. $5 from Melanie saying, have a great weekend. Thanks for the content. I've been learning lots. Always appreciate you here, Melanie. And $2 from Vaguely Sober. I don't know what emojis those are. They're hearts? Okay. There you go. He says, thanks, everyone. We appreciate you, Vaguely. That's all we got for today. A fun little expansion draft. Let us know who actually drafted well. It's definitely Megan. She definitely drafted the best 5 cities. It's not even close. But
I'm dying with how off the rails it got in the final round for you guys. I wished I had gone a little crazier with it.
Well, you're going to win the draft because you picked real cities, so congrats.
Nah, put San Juan in there.
We'll know in 5 years. You got to wait 5 years.
Yeah, San Juan can be the unsigned college free agent that Megan picks up. So we do have to get out of here for the day, though. We are off for the weekend, but we will be back Monday talking more hockey stuff. Hopefully some news happens. I don't know. It'll be fun. We appreciate y'all. Go enjoy the Olympics this weekend, and we will talk to you later.
We all silly like the mayor.